All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Glenn Mattson, automation analyst at Ladenburg Thalmann, here with Ben Wolf, CEO, and Trevor Thatcher, CFO of Palladyne AI. I'll just read off what Palladyne's mission statement is. It says, Palladyne's mission is to deliver AI software that enables robotic and unmanned platforms in industrial and defense sectors to perform complex tasks in unstructured and dynamic human environments. So that's the technical part, but we'll break that down maybe over the next 25 minutes. Quickly, why don't we start, Ben? You can give us a little bit. You have a very interesting background. Maybe what brought you to Palladyne, your history, if you don't mind.
Sure. So starting off back in the early 2000s, I was running a private equity firm, a $2 billion private equity firm, and we were primarily focused on tech and telecom investing. During that time, I co-founded Clearwire, which was the first 4G wireless carrier in the U.S. Sold that to Sprint for $14 billion in 2012. Retired from running the private equity fund and was looking for what else I was going to do after that stint, and had a thesis that the large defense contractors in the post-sequestration era would be looking to get rid of businesses that were not profitable. So I spent a lot of time talking to all the big defense primes and came across a robotics company that Raytheon owned, which then was called Raytheon Sarcos. And it was the robotics division of Raytheon. So I wound up engaging in a dialogue with them and ultimately wound up buying the business from them. And the whole focus back then was on hardware platforms, robotic hardware platforms that were primarily going to be used by the defense industry. So my wife and I funded a management buyout of the business in 2015 and did several rounds of private capital raising between 2015 and 2021. And then we went public through a de-SPAC transaction in 2021. I promptly retired from the business because I had no interest in being a public company CEO for a fourth time, and we brought in a new management team, and now I'm back at the company because the 2 years after I retired didn't go particularly well for the company. So I would say that this is now a turnaround effort, and that's why I'm here.
Great, very helpful. Interesting that you got your wife involved in the buyout as well, so congrats on that.
She was our general counsel for a lot of years.
Great, and so just some quick background. So you mentioned Sarcos. Maybe you can give us a background on what that was. Maybe helps us understand the technology that it is today and the pivot you made since then.
You bet. So we were in the robotics industry going way back to the 1980s, mid-1980s. And some of the hardware platforms that we have developed over the years, you've probably seen yourselves if you've been to the Disney theme parks and gone on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. The pirates on that ride are all our robots. Abraham Lincoln on Main Street at Disney is one of our robots. The fountains at the Bellagio Hotel in front of Bellagio at that lake, 265 robots, those are all ours. So we did a lot of interesting kind of development, first-time development efforts with robots that nobody had ever seen before. We did a lot of work with the Pentagon on custom development efforts. We did work with NASA. We created humanoid robots for NASA. So a long history in robotics. When I bought the business from Raytheon, we were very focused on taking a lot of those technologies that us taxpayers had spent hundreds of millions to develop and trying to commercialize it, make them relevant not just to the military, but also relevant to commercial applications, manufacturing, construction, warehousing, and logistics. And to do that, to make that jump to a commercial product, we had to develop artificial intelligence software that would make it easier to teach robots how to perform challenging tasks. So in 2018, we started the development process to develop an AI platform that was novel, that took a different approach to AI than what you currently see today. And when I came back to the company at the end of 2023, while they had not done a good job at commercializing the hardware components that they were working on, they had done a fantastic job on the artificial intelligence platform. So when I came back at the end of 2023, we decided to put all of the hardware development efforts on hold and to focus exclusively on our software, because the software was relevant not just to our own robots, but to all manner of different types of robots, whether they're robots on the factory floor, whether they're flying drones, so whether it's fixed in place or mobile, our software is relevant to help those machines think the way humans do. And what I mean by that is we have created the reasoning capability so that robots can observe what's going on in their environment and then reason about what they should be doing to respond to the environment. And as a result, we're able to allow robots to perform very complex tasks that today only humans can do.
It's helpful, and hopefully the robots don't reason that they ought to not be working for us and vice versa. Great, so let's get into it a little more specifically. You have two separate areas that you focus on, industrial and defense. Want to get a little more granular on that, but maybe just could you give us a little more background on the technology, the core behind it? Why that reasoning and that thinking? How you came to develop that and all that?
Yeah, so as we were developing our own hardware systems, it became clear that there had to be a better way to teach robots to perform new tasks, to do new kinds of work, and to be more agile so that they could do many tasks instead of just one. The way a robot is programmed today, like if you're looking at one on a factory floor, some group of people are sitting down writing millions of lines of code to program that robot to be able to perform a very specific task. And when we were talking about the types of robots that we were bringing to market, we expected them to be operating in all kinds of dynamic environments where the environment is always changing and the task is always changing. And so how do you quickly make a robot agile enough to be able to perform all of these different tasks in a changing environment? It's not practical to think that you're going to have 4 guys sitting in a room writing millions of lines of code and that they can do that so quickly that the robot can then adapt to a new task. So that's what the genesis was of our idea. And we have now commercialized the software so that it can be installed or co-located with an industrial robot, and in literally a matter of minutes, a layperson, a non-technical person, a line worker, if you will, blue-collar worker, can program a robot to perform new complex tasks. So literally in a matter of minutes. So that's what we call our Palladyne IQ product that is used for industrial robots, primarily that are on a factory floor, fixed in place. The other product that we have is called Palladyne Pilot, and that is used on drones. And that's primarily a defense application. And what that product does, it's got a lot of the same code base in common with the IQ product, but what this does is it allows low-cost drones to be able to collaborate and to autonomously, meaning on their own, be able to identify and prioritize and track moving targets on the ground. And that's something that nobody has ever been able to do before on a small drone platform. So again, you could launch, let's say, 4 or 5 or 6 drones with a single operator, no longer having to remote control that drone, give the drone a set, or give the fleet of drones a set of objectives, say this is your mission, follow this truck. And the drones will collaborate while they're in the air and autonomously follow whatever the target is on the ground. So tremendous defense applications. I think it makes small low-cost drones far more capable and effective than what they are on their own.
Are you talking about one target or number of targets simultaneously?
It can be multiple targets. It can be multiple targets.
So yeah, since we're on the drone, we'll keep talking about that a little bit. So can you talk about how you intend to go to market with that product, your software on existing hardware, and what kind of relationships you've established and that kind of stuff?
Sure. So we've announced a partnership with Red Cat, who is also here at this conference talking about what they're doing with the military on their drones. So they're the first drone OEM for us to work with. And we have now ported our software onto many of their various platforms that they're selling. And so now that the commercialization effort is done and the drones are working and we've demonstrated that they work successfully, we will now be partnering with Red Cat to go to various government agencies and demonstrate collaboratively what our software can do on their drones. I'm sure we'll have other drone partners in the future, but right now we've been focused on the partnership with Red Cat.
And the opportunity for, can you talk about how you intend to price that product and what kind of revenue stream?
Sure. So on the drone product, it is a licensing fee. It's a software license. We don't have to provide any hardware. The software just gets uploaded directly onto the drone. And we expect the selling price to our government customers to be somewhere between 5 and 10% of the overall drone system price. So if we're talking about a $40,000 drone, expect to see our software that we're paid somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 per drone for that software. It's a one-time perpetual license fee, largely because we expect most of these drones to not really be in service for more than a year. These low-cost drones are, to some extent, disposable. So we have a one-time upfront license fee. That's something that the government is far more comfortable with than paying, annual recurring fees. On the Palladyne IQ product, which is the one for industrial robots, that is an annual license fee. So in that case, the pricing is $35,000 per robot per year, and that, when you look at the little bit of hardware that goes along with it and you amortize that over a typical useful life, generally our product is priced at about half of the cost of a full-time employee. So it's really easy for us to demonstrate to our customers the value proposition that they'll get an immediate ROI, and they've got a machine that doesn't just work 8 hours at a time, it can work 24/7 and only get paid like half an FTE. So that's a recurring revenue model for that side of the business, and it's a one-time upfront revenue model for the drone.
So on the drone side, while it's one time upfront, it's also like you mentioned, kind of a constant refresh. A lot of these drones are one-way devices, so that almost becomes a recurring revenue stream.
That's correct.
in some sense.
That's correct.
What's your financial arrangement with Red Cat? Partnership percentage?
Yeah, so they'll get some revenue from us if they bring a customer to us and they load it onto the drone.
On the you could maybe the idea of putting your software on the Red Cat drone, for instance. Can you just give us some background as to the genesis of that? Was there some DoD activity where they asked you to pursue that, or was that something that the two companies saw as an obvious synergy?
Yeah, I think it was more that we're both in Salt Lake City. We know we know each other well,
Right.
and so we were brainstorming about what we could do to improve each other's opportunities with DoD. We have had some DoD customers ask us to port our software onto different kinds of drones and chips, and in fact, we announced recently a contract with the Air Force to port our software onto a new Intel chip, which we had not been on before. So some of this is led by the DoD, and other efforts are us just trying to be proactive and figure out where the market's going.
Sorry.
Side, like we see that in Asia, like China is very popular. It's taking longer here in the US, but there's other companies also like Electronica, PDYN, that are coming with the humanoid robots. Can you tell us a little bit about what is your advantage over, or if you have an advantage over these two companies, PDYN or Electronica? I understand they are in BMW and Mercedes-Benz as well.
So they are humanoid companies, and we don't do anything with humanoids. And we're not in the hardware business. So, very different. They are trying to solve some of the challenges at BMW and other automobile factories with a full-bodied humanoid form factor, and they use their own internally created artificial intelligence to try and do that. It is a challenge. It is a real challenge. We are far more focused on fixed-in-place industrial robots that do repetitive tasks rather than trying to be as versatile as a human being.
What's your present cash position and burn rate per month?
We raised a little bit of capital in the first quarter on an ATM, so we finished the first quarter with $46.5 million of cash on hand, and our burn rate is less than $2 million a month. So if we have no new revenues at all, which if we don't, somebody should shoot me. But if we have no new revenues, we have at least 2 years worth of runway.
What's your future intentions, acquire other companies, invest in other companies, the same space?
I don't have a preset plan other than to get profitable and to create a lot of shareholder value.
Are you guys national or global or both?
We are working with customers all around the globe. We are not working with any customer, when I say all around the globe, we are focused internationally. Most of our sales efforts today are in the US. There's a lot to do here. You also have a better opportunity for us in markets where wages are high and there's a scarcity of blue-collar workers. So markets like China and India are probably last priorities for us.
We kind of glanced over the IQ and the industrial side a little bit, so maybe we can talk about that some more. First off, the product development, there's a $13 million, I believe, contract with the Air Force, and I believe that was, well, it's Air Force, and that sounds like DoD, and that sounds like part of like the pilot side. I think clearly we're getting confusion. I believe that was for development of technology for the industrial side. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. What's interesting is the military has a lot of the same needs as the commercial sector when it comes to manufacturing and remanufacturing and repair and maintenance of aircraft and ships. I mean, a lot of the things that people do in the military are also being replicated on the commercial side and vice versa. So we do have, you're correct, we have a $13.4 million contract with the Air Force to develop our software for use specifically in aviation parts remanufacturing, repair, and maintenance. So let me give you an example of how the robot is being used, or the software is being used today. At one of the Air Force bases, they do a lot of depainting, paint stripping, and corrosion stripping off of aviation parts. So think about things like propellers, brake drums, wheels, things like that. And the way that job has been historically done is they have a big paint booth, and a couple of workers will drag the part into the paint booth. They wear hazmat suits, and they have a handheld media blaster or sand blaster in their hand. And it's a dull, nasty, dirty, awful job to do. Hot, and it takes a long time. We now have taken a robot that they had in storage, an old FANUC robot, put our software on it, put the robot with our software in the paint booth, and it has the ability now to do all of the media blasting, sand blasting on its own autonomously without having to have a human anywhere near the paint booth. So that's an example of a job in an unstructured environment, not on a manufacturing line or assembly line, where the things are always different. The parts are always different. The position on the floor or on the wall or hanging on the ceiling is always different, and our artificial intelligence is capable of instructing the robot how to perform that task. And that's the same kind of thing that you see a company like Delta Airlines needing to deal with. So it's kind of a, we call it the commercial side, but in reality, it's really about unstructured environments, whether it's commercial or military.
Right. In that IQ side, on the industrial side, is there, can you talk about the plans for deployment? Would you go, like that's an existing robot that you deployed your software on, would you typically go into an environment where you put your software into existing hardware that's out there already, or would you typically sell with a new sale?
We have the ability to do both, and we see interest from customers on both sides. I think that the greatest interest today is in jobs where humans are doing the job and there isn't a robot in place. So that gives us an ability to work with systems integrators and with robot OEMs to actually help them sell new robots. And the reason we're able to do that is because our software makes them more capable than what they would be on their own. But I think ultimately over the next 3-4 years, you'll probably see, my best guess is 70% of our deployments will be on new robots and 30% will be retrofitting older robots.
Right, and then maybe just a little bit about, you talked about the cost, but what kind of ROI is the, maybe versus a human doing the same task?
So the way we look at it, a typical, at least in the United States, a typical blue-collar worker in a manufacturing facility, fully burdened with all costs, including hiring, firing, training, all that kind of stuff, typically comes in about $110,000 a year, $110,000, $111,000. Depends on the industry, but that's kind of a good order of magnitude. If you take a look at our annual software license fee of $35,000, plus the amortized cost of a new robot, a vision system, and a gripper on the end of the robot, you're kind of all in on an annual basis about $45,000 a year, $47,000. So, and that's a generalization, but as a result, we're kind of half of the cost of an FTE. So there's an immediate ROI from the word go for a customer.
Right. Then there's this kind of push for reshoring in manufacturing. So I imagine that would be a tailwind. Could you talk about that?
I think the reshoring and renewed focus on manufacturing in the U.S. is a huge benefit for us, a huge tailwind. Having said that, there's a caveat. That caveat is the tariff situation, I think, is causing everybody to reevaluate what do they want to do internationally, what do they want to do domestically. So we had a couple of customer engagements where we were talking about helping to automate some tasks in European factories for American companies, and they've kind of said, let's hold off. We got to figure out with our board of directors whether we're going to invest more in the U.S. and deprioritize international operations. At the end of the day, I think that's what's likely to happen because of the reshoring focus. So I think that the opportunity set for us now is much larger than it was before, but it also might create a little bit of a speed bump in terms of our speed to get to market.
We hit on the cash position and the burn, and I don't know if Trevor wants to chime in at all because he looks a little lonely over there. But maybe could you go on a little bit about the leverage in the model and as the company ramps, maybe target if you've ever released something on target?
Yeah. So we think we have a really scalable and leverageable business because we've got our core set of AI engineers, and we don't need any more than we currently have to be able to continue to put out the product and support it. Where we do need to grow our headcount, and headcount is by far our single biggest expense, where we need to grow the headcount is on the sales and marketing side, but we're only going to do that as we have success and we know what really resonates with customers, and we know what industries we can tackle where the low-hanging fruit is. So beyond the scaling of our sales and marketing effort, attending trade shows, and all of that has expense, but it's not huge, we don't have any other costs that are going to build up in the business. So as we start getting hundreds and then thousands of robots deployed with our software, it's really like an annuity. And so I think we have tremendous leverage in this business.
And being that it's a software business, I imagine the gross margins are very high. And
that's right.
And so that'll flow
it doesn't cost us anything to make another copy of the software.
That's right.
Is the government a client of yours in some capacity?
Who?
Do you have any kind of government contract?
Yeah, so we have 2 Air Force contracts. So DoD through the Air Force has a contract with us both on our drone product and one on the commercial industrial robotic side.
Go ahead, audit question.
Yeah, on the industrial side, and I'm not an expert in this part of the industry, but there are a lot of big, like established players like that seem like, they're gonna be the primary, the place a lot of large customers go. So these kind of, are you working with or through them? Or are you just like gonna be competing with them? How does your positioning fit with that?
So generally speaking, systems integrators play a really big role in the automation industry. And there are really big ones like Rockwell, and there are a mosquito fleet of small ones and everything in between. I think at the last count I saw that there are 1,600 different systems integrators in the US alone, and they all say they do something with robots and automation. So it's a very fragmented industry. You've got a handful of really big ones, and then you've got just a ton of other ones. We work with some of those. We don't have to work with them. We work directly with customers that have their own capabilities when it comes to automation in-house. So if you look at the automobile manufacturers, many of them have fairly established large automation experts in-house. So we can work directly with some of those that are more sophisticated. If you take a look at some of the other companies that we're talking to, they rely on systems integrators, and so the systems integrator becomes our channel. We're not competing directly with systems integrators. In fact, I could argue that we have we have an ability to make systems integrators more profitable, because if you can now train a robot to perform a task in a matter of minutes or hours instead of months, now those systems integrators can value charge their customers for an end result without it just being a by-the-hour kind of consulting business almost. So I think, I was just on the phone with 2 large systems integrators yesterday talking about that very thing, and they're very interested in working with us because we think together we can make them a lot more profitable while driving some good revenue for us.
Any other questions from the audience?
What's your contract size on the Air Force and the industrial?
$13.4 million over 4 years. So that's a single contract at $13.4 million. I think we've already taken down about 6 of that. It can be canceled at any time, the way all DoD contracts can be canceled at any time. So we're kind of at a mercy of the Pentagon at this point. But we are hitting all of our milestones on that contract, and they're very happy with us at this point. So we expect the funding to continue.
What's the future of the Air Force?
I mean, where could it go?
Yeah.
So the Air Force does a lot in the aircraft manufacture or remanufacturing, maintenance, and repair space. I think that there could be hundreds of robots that the Air Force uses in just their MRO activities. And then if you take a look at comparable types of activities by the Navy and shipyards, I think there's an even bigger opportunity there. So I think it could be quite large.
What would it take you to get to that point?
Well,
What do you require right now?
we don't require anything other than just time for our customers to get through the evaluation process. We have everything else we need in the product.
On the other side, the industrial?
Same thing. And we're in the same place. I mean, again, the product is working well. We're at the very beginning of the sales cycle.
Dollar amount?
We haven't given any projections on dollar amounts in terms of total revenue. And if I told you something, I would just be pulling it out of the air. So I'm not going to do that. I will give you an interesting statistic, though, from a cash flow perspective. If you just look at the IQ side, the commercial robotics side, if we have between 500 and 1,000 robots installed globally with our software, paying $35,000 a year, we will be cash flow positive. So it does not take a large number of installations for us to start generating positive cash.
What's your cost on the robot versus the drones? Drones is 50,000.
No, so on the drone side, we charge our customer between 5 and 10% of the total system price. So if the total system price for the drone is $50,000, we're going to charge them somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000, and that's a one-time license fee. On the commercial side, on the commercial robotics side, that's $35,000 a year that we charge the customer, and it's per robot, $35,000 per year per robot.
If there's any more questions, otherwise we probably should wrap up.
All right, thank you, everybody.